Today we have a full bag of 190% silver Peace and Morgan silver dollars, and today we're going to go through them and look for any better dates, conditions, and more. We're also going to talk about why I collect and stack silver dollars, and we will talk about the melt value of silver dollars and, the word melt as well. So let's get into it and dump these out, but do me a favor while I'm dumping these out onto the table, go down and subscribe. Help me continue to grow the channel, especially if you like silver stacking content like this and want to learn more. Make sure you don't miss out on your chance to win a full monster box of Silver Eagles by going to our sponsor sdbullion.com/silverseeker and get your entry today. So we will get started by going through these and, like I said, talking about the melt and everything like that. And additionally, I'll tell you what I paid for them because I know many of you will ask very soon, so stick with us. And we will get started with this one right here. So what we have right here is a 1922 piece silver dollar, and it is definitely circulated, but it actually has really good detail on the breast feathers here, probably an AU, so it's really not too bad. That being said, 22 is like the most common of all piece dollars. And so, yeah, there's not anything super special there. And we got another 22 as well. So I'm going to kind of go through these. And if I see anything that kind of sparks my interest, for example, this 1900 these in better condition than this one has very bad rim dings. There's glue on it. Would definitely be worth more. In this condition, it's not. But we'll kind of look at these while I'm talking to you. And I want to start off by talking about the 90% silver weight. In other words, the melt. And I will start with that term melt. So I did a YouTube short a while back talking about the melt value of dimes and quarters and half dollars, 1964 and before. And you would not believe how many people commented on the channel saying that, why would you tell people to melt their silver coins? That's highly illegal. People are going to go to jail. Let me tell you a couple of things. And I'm looking at this a little bit more closely because it is an 89, but it's an 89p. But let me tell you a little bit about that in a bit more detail. First, and I said this in another YouTube short, it's not illegal. They were melting silver coins all the way back in the 70s and 80s. And the reason that it's not illegal, and this is something you need to think about, melting of silver dollars, dimes, quarters, and half dollars, and by the way, I don't support it. We're never going to melt these, but I'll get into more detail about that in a second. But, the melting of dimes, quarters, half dollars, silver dollars doesn't affect the day-to-day value of transactions from the U.S. government. So, for example, there is actually a prohibition against melting pennies and nickels, but old silver coins, there is not. And the reason for that is that these coins do not actually get circulated. They don't actually get used. I'm going to put that one aside and look at it closer in a second. And so melting these down doesn't make a difference because melting them down isn't going to change the fact that they're already out of circulation. In other words, it's not going to affect the availability of U.S. currency in circulation, and that's not going to make a difference at all. Now, in the 80s, actually, there's articles even on PCGS about the huge silver melts of the 80s. We're talking millions of dollars of face value. Silvertown specifically was one company that melted millions of dollars of face value of dimes, quarters, half dollars, and believe it or not, even silver dollars just like these. They refined them, turned them into bars, and shipped them off overseas or wherever else they sold them domestically, whatever it is. But my point is they were 100% melting them for the value. And I've actually talked about that article before, but they did that very openly and publicly. And obviously, because it's not illegal, there was never any crimes or, penalties levied against Silvertown or any of the other big silver pot melters back in the 80s. Because it's not illegal. Now, the reason for the prohibition on nickels and pennies exists because taking a bunch of nickels and pennies out of circulation would, in fact, destroy the availability of U.S. currency in circulation. And that could actually disrupt, kind of like we had the quote-unquote coin shortage a few years ago during the pandemic. That could disrupt day-to-day transactions in the United States. But these are not going to because they've already been pulled out. Like, you got the coin roll hunters, the people that are looking through half dollars, myself included, looking for silver coins. They don't pull them out and then go spend them, do they? No, they pull them out and they stack them. So the people that have these are keeping them for their silver value. So the fact that they're melted or not doesn't make a difference. Now, that being said, I do not recommend, and I don't melt 90% silver coins. I like keeping the history. So these things right here, I will use for whatever, or I'll just keep in my stack, just depending on what, I need them for. But these specific coins right here, I won't actually melt because I love the history of old silver coins. And this one actually has some good luster to it. If that were cleaned up, I'm not saying I don't clean coins, but I'm just saying if that weren't dirty is what I'm trying to say. you could definitely see good luster on there. But anyway, I don't recommend melting them, and referring to the melt value doesn't mean that you should melt them. It just means that inside the coin, if you were to melt it down and refine it, there is a certain amount of silver per dollar. Now, with dimes, quarters, and half dollars, and we've said this before, it's 0.715 ounces of silver. But for silver dollars, it's actually 0.7734, or we use 0.77 as standard because, to account for wear. Actually, with your dimes, quarters, and half dollars, it's actually 0.725 or 723. Anyway, it's 0.72 something, but we use 0.715 for typical math for the same reason, that we are accounting for wear. But again, going back to the whole melt thing, I'm not saying that we actually melt these coins. We don't melt these. We just refer to melt so that we can easily know what the value of the silver inside of the coin is. I've noticed a couple of 1900 O's in here. So that's why we refer to the melt value. It's not saying that we're going to melt them, but if you were to do so, it would not actually be illegal to do so. Now, looking at that prohibition of nickels and pennies, just to give you a good example, even nickels and pennies, in that prohibition, there is an exemption for, guess, 1942 to 1945 war nickels. In other words, the ones that are comprised of 35% silver. That's an 1899 O right there. It's not the micro O. If this were the micro O, it would be a very much of a key date, but it's not. But anyway, even in that prohibition against the melting of nickels and pennies, it has an exemption for war nickels. So in other words, even though it's illegal to melt nickels and pennies, it is not illegal to melt nickels and pennies from 1942. In 42, I should be very clear. In 42, only the ones that are 35% silver, because in 42, half of them were silver, half of them weren't. And then 43, 4, and 5, it is not illegal to melt those. Ooh, this is a 92. Yeah, a 92. If this were in better condition, would be a key date. Even the 92 Philly is considered a key date. But look at this. I mean, yeah, it's really circulated. Now, if this were like a 92.0, even in this condition, I'm still going to put this aside. Like, that's a hole filler. Like, if you're putting a set of silver dollars together and you can't get the key dates, you look for things like that so you can put them in the book and say, look, I have the coin, even though you don't have it in the condition that you were hoping for. You do at least have the coin. But anyway, we're not going to melt these. And so whenever I refer to the melt value, I'm not saying that I'm going to melt these coins. I'm just saying that is the melt value of the coins if that were to happen. And then we use that number. Is that an O? Is an O. Hey, look at that. 86O. Like, if same thing with the 92. If this were in better condition, I mean, this unfortunately is heavily circulated, so this is another what we call a hole filler. But if that were in better condition, that one would actually go along with their other stuff as well. I know I keep getting off topic here, but that's because I'm also looking at coins while I'm talking. So this is more of a rambling. It's not a charts on the screen, just me talking to you. This is heavily polished. It's an 81S. Yeah, 81S. Yeah, if that weren't polished, it's something I'd keep aside as well. But anyway, why do I collect these then? Well, because I love the history. I kind of already said this, but I love the history of silver dollars. And I love, I just love thinking, like, if you think about, all right, let's look at, all right, I don't want to mix these ones already. All right, let's look at this one, for example, this 92. Imagine if this thing could talk. Imagine what it could say. Imagine what it could tell you. It's really mind-blowing. The amount of people that had to have had this coin and used this coin to be this circulated, this worn down, is mind-blowing. I mean, compare it to this 21, and this 21 even has some circulation on it. That's not BU either. But just imagine how many fingers this had to have touched and crossed, and how many pockets this coin had to have been in for it to get in this condition and this kind of wear. I mean, it's not like, no one took a Dremel tool to it or a polisher to it or to wear it down artificially. That is absolutely just regular circulation. I mean, we're talking thousands of people have touched this coin. Imagine the stories it could tell if it could talk. So I love the history of things like this. It's exciting to me. And, that's why I stack it. That's why I collect it. Oh, we have a 1921 with a hole in it there. So another 1899. Oh. Did we already see this one? I think we already saw that one. But anyway, that's kind of another 99O. Neither of them are the micro O, but man. So anyway, if you were wondering, so I know many of you were probably saying, all right, Seeker, what did you pay for these? Well, I paid $26 a piece for them. And, I was happy to get them. Granted, you could probably get these for around that price elsewhere, especially given that we found one with a hole in it. We've had some polished ones. We've had some heavily circulated ones. But you know what? I think it's a good price regardless. I'm really really glad to have these. And man, look at this 21, or 22. That luster there is gorgeous, isn't it? Man, that's beautiful. So I'm going to finish going through these guys because I kind of said everything I wanted to say on this subject, but I'll tell you if there's anything else in here worth noting. All right, so I'm going through them, and I just wanted to point out that this 22 right here, even though it has a couple of dark spots on it, it has really good luster. Probably an AU all day, just really nice. I'm going to put that one aside with the 92 and with the 86.0. But everything else so far has been nothing of significance, but I'm going to finish this up. Okay, so nothing of serious significance, which is what I expected. The guy who sold them to me, he knew, you know, there wasn't anything super good in here, but it was cool to find a 92, even though it's so circulated that it's not really a key date anymore. Same with the 86.0. Both of these coins right here would be worth hundreds if they were in the condition of this piece dollar, just to give you an example, or even thousands if they were this nice. So anyway, that's what we found today. But like I said, most of this video was really about going through the coins while I talk to you about why we talk about the melt value of silver coins, why we stack silver coins, and you know, why I like to keep these into my stack. So if you like this video, if you learned a little bit, even though it was super informal and just a little bit fun, let me know. Leave a comment down below as well. Let me know that. Also, don't forget to subscribe and check out this video up top here if you haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it's a great one. Guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.